This is TWiT.
This morning, actually, read this piece, which I think posted quite late last night. And it ties into what happened on Monday with WWDC and the new Siri that was announced. But this is a piece from Fortune, and the headline kind of sums it up. How Amazon blew Alexa's shot to dominate AI, which basically it's a very long, really interesting, detailed piece about building an LLM-powered voice assistant. And the sources for the article are former employees, which is obviously something you need to take with a grain of salt because former employees may have an axe to grind. But they spoke with more than a dozen who all spoke to the challenges that Amazon has faced in trying to bring its voice assistant, which is arguably one of the most competent voice assistants that we currently have, and really had the potential lead here to become the vision that Jeff Bezos has always said he had for Alexa, which is, I'm sorry, should I be using a pseudonym?
Yeah, some sort of
the A lady. Sorry, everyone. But anyway, has had the vision for this voice assistant to be like Star Trek's computer. And, this was a little bit what we saw on Monday from Apple and its new Siri, which is a much more intelligent voice assistant, a much more conversational voice assistant, one that you don't have to speak specific nomenclature to, and one that it seems like going to be much less likely to get annoyed with because when you ask it to do something, it does the wrong thing, which is something I feel we all experience with voice assistants today. So what this piece basically goes into is, and what I found really interesting is the real challenge here of taking the voice assistants we have today and turning them into the voice assistants that we were promised and that potentially, LLM, generative AI, could provide, which is this superpowered, supercharged voice assistant. And what the employees were saying and told Fortune is that basically there's two problems here. One is Amazon. Amazon is a problem in that it is a very interesting org structure. It doesn't work sort of top down. It's a distributed org structure with lots of little different teams working together. And this caused struggles but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part to me is that they're trying to shoehorn a new technology onto an old technology. And this is really interesting for me to sort of see, can our current voice assistants, Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant, become smarter? Or do we actually need to build voice assistants from scratch? Start again. Right. And that's what this piece kind of tackles is, and ultimately I think it shows that there is the potential to use the voice assistants we have and make them smarter, but that it's going to be really a struggle. And it's going to take a long time. And what Apple showed off on the stage, that's not something I don't think we're even really going to get to experience in the fall with iOS 18. I think it's going to be a little longer until that arrives. Amazon showed off its new Alexa last fall. We have seen no sign of it. And this piece specifically goes into the points that basically it's just not good enough. It's still not consistent. It hallucinates. It gets things wrong. This is a quote from one of the former employees, and that it's just incredibly hard to do this. So this was a fascinating deep dive into the actual technology that runs voice assistants and how it could get better. But it's going to be a long time. What was your take on it, Mikah? What did you think?
Yeah. So this is what frustrates me about this is, one, I'm kind of going through it. I'm reading through and they're talking about, here is when Amazon said, Alexa, let's chat. and talked about how this was going to be a whole new system and it was going to do this, it was going to do that, it was going to do the other. And then they just went quiet. And I'm kind of nodding my head like, yeah, they did just go quiet. What the heck happened there? I've been waiting for it. I look at my show every day, waiting for the screen to say, hey, you want to try out this thing that's in beta? Never happens. And then we heard the rumor that maybe they were going to announce it or release it, but it was going to cost, it was going to be a subscription. And then I thought, okay, well, there's no way they're going to convince me to pay extra when I'm already an Amazon Prime subscriber. But more so, just kind of overall, yeah, there is this interesting struggle, it seems, when it comes to whether you burn it all down and start from the ground up, or you try to augment the technology that you have right now. And, it's impressive what Siri, which of course existed before Apple purchased it, was able to do, and what Amazon's ALEXA was able to do at the time when they first came out. Very impressive what it could do in the early days. And as I've mentioned before, Amazon had the unique hurdle that I think ended up helping it, which was that the initial ALEXA devices, the Echo devices, were towers with no screen on them. And so they really had to build a voice first operating system and interaction model that challenged them to not kind of punt to, hey, here's what I found on the web for you. So
go to your phone, see the results.
Right, exactly. Look at your phone. They had such an early lead with that. And you wonder how much hubris is involved behind the scenes, and what's at stake there. At the same time, I have a bit of understanding in the sense that it really does feel like ChatGPT as a system, even though the technologies behind it were being built slowly but surely over the course of the previous 5 to 8 years or whatever, ChatGPT and the generative AI craze really took off so quick. So I give some grace to these companies who are trying to catch up. It's just, I think it would behoove these companies to consider burning it all down and just starting anew.
Starting again.
Yeah, rather than trying to make some weird Frankenstein project of the old system and the new system. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting here, and what I hadn't really realized until I read this piece, although I'd sort of heard snippets, is that they could have built this before, Amazon, Google, maybe even Apple could have had a ChatGPT before OpenAI came along if they had focused their resources, because devices like Amazon's voice assistant have used large language models for a while. It's just this new implementation of the generative AI that is, that's what's changed. The technology has improved, and the compute power specifically has improved. And actually, this was one of the points that made in the article, was that Amazon hasn't had enough access to this. The NVIDIA GPU seems to be the hottest thing in tech right now, because this is what you need to run these types of models. So I think it's interesting that they were kind of, slumbering giants. They were asleep on the watch, and they could have potentially built a better voice assistant for us sooner, but were caught off guard. And all three of the large companies, I think, that have been in the same position. We definitely saw this happen with Google. We've seen Apple playing catch up. But it's also, I think, really key to understand that there is a big difference between a voice assistant and a chatbot in a browser. Like a chatbot in a browser, what we all get to play with ChatGPT and similar models is fascinating and interesting. And as we'll probably talk about in the next segment, also has many issues and concerns. But a voice assistant has access to your home and or your phone and or your computer, and has so much more power. So there's much, those guardrails have to be really in place. So I can also see why they didn't perhaps rush down this path. But now that they're playing catch up and sprinting down this path, I'm worried about some of the unintended side effects we might see, which is, why I think there's been a slow rollout, but there's a lot of pressure on these companies to push that rollout faster, as this article goes into a lot of depth. So it's going to be interesting to see where it lands. But ultimately, I just want a really good voice assistant. So whoever can get me that.
Whoever can do it first.
Yes.
And that's
what I want.
Kind of, I understand there's something that's very important here, which is the hesitance to put out something that has the potential to hallucinate in a big way. You don't want to be part of the headlines that Google has been a part of with the glue on the spaghetti or whatever it is. You want to, and especially a company like Apple. I know this is about Amazon,
yes,
but
they really
Apple,
siloed GPT away in that. It was like, oh yeah, and yes, you can get to it if you want. Next chapter.
You better hit OK and you better hit accept and also scan your face and swipe your ID and then we'll let you know. Yeah, they did. They said, and this is chat, that's Chat GPT through and through. That's, our hands are off of that. So yeah, when it comes to that, I understand the desire to not create a thing that is going to get you those negative headlines. And I think it was Tim Cook who said in an interview, it may have been Craig Federighi, but one of them said in an interview that they didn't want to hand the teenager the keys to the car, basically, that they didn't want to take this system that's not been fully reliable and just say, go forth and do. They wanted to really kind of limit what's possible. Yeah. And so maybe that's the thing about why the current system, works in its relative inability to do the things that I want it to do. At least it's not with its whole heart and it's with absolute certainty. It's not rushing forward. Yeah. And getting it wrong. That's kind of good, I guess, now that I think about it. But yeah, I want the assistant that it's a little bit of what Apple showed on stage. And again, this is showing things on stage. We have not seen the final outcome. When there was just more contextual awareness. It knows where I live. It knows how far away the doctor's appointment is. It knows that my mom's birthday is on the same day as my doctor's appointment and that I every year do this. And so then it pops up an alert that says, hey, you're probably going to want to pre-order the gift this year because you have a doctor's appointment on that day. So you won't be able to do it at the last minute like you normally do, you fool, or something. So that's the context. And I don't care if it calls me a fool. That's fine too. But that's the context that I want these systems to have. And I think that would improve upon the technology. But when in your kind of understanding of the smart home area, and especially when thinking about regular, everyday folks who aren't as steeped in this stuff as we are, what do you think they want from an assistant? Are they fine with just a thing that does timers? Or do they have the complaints that we have about the limitations of these systems?
So I think that's the key. And that's actually the reason why this is all moving so fast is because, yes, right now, that's what people use assistants for: timers, streaming music, shopping lists, because it's easy. What this will do, what generative AI powered voice assistants will do, is make using them easy so that everyone will use them, as opposed to now, if you want to use an assistant to set up a smart home routine or to do something more technically advanced or more useful, it's complicated. You have to get out an app, maybe even do some kind of mini programming using shortcuts or something, and that's not easy, and it often doesn't work. But with the context, with the conversational ability, and with the deeper integration and knowledge that these types of generative AI powered voice assistants, digital assistants can have, it can be a question more of like, you walk in your house and your digital assistant will prompt you, will be proactive and say, I can do this for you. I know this and I can offer it to you, as opposed to you having to constantly command and respond with the assistant. And I think it will make these assistants so much more useful to so many more people than they are today, which is I think why there's this AI arms race on right now, because if you can nail that and reach a broad audience, that's going to be really valuable.
Thanks so much for watching this little chunk of Tech News Weekly. If you'd like to get the full episode, well, head over to twit.tv/TNW. There you'll find buttons you can click or tap to subscribe to the entire show in audio and video formats. Or just look in the description. We've got links down there as well.